Is James O'Keefe going to be arrested? Now, this is the news. I heard it, like, there's so much news that it's tough to keep up with the news. I didn't hear. I heard that, you know, a duo had been indicted or pleaded guilty. I thought it, whatever. Okay. This is from The Guardian. That's Joe Biden, and that looks like Ashley Biden. Listen to this. Duo, that's two, sorry, plead guilty to plot to sell Biden daughter's stolen diary to Project Veritas. Amy, by the way, this is past tense of loved in French. Amy Harris stole items from Ashley Biden's room and conspired Robert Kurlander to sell them to activist group, prosecutors say. I presume they mean Project Veritas. August 25th, 2022. Two people have pleaded guilty in a scheme to peddle a diary and other items belonging to Joe Biden's daughter to the conservative group Project Veritas for $40,000. So this number, $40,000, is going to be very important in fact and in law and in allegations if any of them come up. Just remember that. Okay, I just got a notification from a news outlet. The two, both from Florida. This is why I got confused. I heard people were arrested, indicted in Florida on voting fraud charges. And I thought this was part of that story when it came across my brain feed yesterday. Lo and behold, no. The two, both from Florida, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit interstate transportation of stolen property. Manhattan U.S. attorney. I think that's the Southern District of New York, if I'm not mistaken. While authorities did not identify Biden, the type of property stolen, or the organization that paid, the details of the investigation have been public for months. Okay. Okay, so the two pleaded, I think it's pleaded guilty, not pled, but pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit interstate, yada, yada, yada. According to case interviews and documents reviewed by the New York Times, Biden left her belongings in the home of a friend at the time and planned to collect them later that year. The friend, who also knew Harris, allowed Harris to also stay at the home as she was embroiled in a custody dispute and was facing financial struggles. Some people have hypothesized that this is something of a halfway house or a type of house. I'm not sure, but whatever. This is all we know. Prosecutors said Harris stole the items and got in touch with the other defendant, a man who contacted Project Veritas, which asked for photos of the materials and then paid for the two to bring it to New York. A very interesting phrasing here, by the way. And you can, if you're reading between the lines, as though you would read something in a way that bad actors would want to manipulate it, they paid for the two to bring it to New York. So, you know, they say, hey, I got this. You want to buy it? And Project Veritas says, well, I don't know if I want to buy it. Come to New York so we can meet in person, because you're not going to send the stolen goods yourself, or you're not going to sell the goods. We don't even know if it's stolen. You know, it's all very ambiguous. If you look at it from Project Veritas's perspective here, if you don't know the items are stolen, someone contacts you and says, we have some good stuff. Do you want to buy it? And by the way, in law, even if it were stolen, I'm fairly certain there's precedent involving the New York Times about journalists acquiring stolen goods. Where there's not precedent to protect journalists is if they conspire to steal, which is exactly where it looks like this is going based on the wording and seemingly based on what appears to be the plea deal entered into by these two defendants. According to Williams, the pair sold the property for $40,000 and even returned to take more of the victim's property when asked to do so. Harris and Kurlander sought to profit from their theft of another person's personal property, and they now stand convicted of a federal felony lawsuit. That's Williams. Williams was the prosecutor. Sorry, where did I just say? Prosecutor said, what's the prosecutor's name? Hold on. Just want to make sure here. Yeah. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Williams. So Williams is making the statement. What is this statement saying? They were asked to steal more property. They were paid $40,000 for the stolen property, and then returned to steal more when asked to do so. They sought to profit from the theft of another person's personal property, suggesting that, you know, Project Veritas was financing this scheme. And they now stand convicted of a federal felony as a result. I'd like to know what federal felony they stand convicted of. Project Veritas has said it received the diary from tipsters who said it had been abandoned in a room. The activist group, keep repeating it, just activist group, which identifies itself as a news organization. Well, then shouldn't they be recognized as a news organization? Guardian, tongue in cheek, said it turned the journal over to law enforcement and never did anything illegal. They didn't say they turned it over to law enforcement. They turned it over to law enforcement. That's why law enforcement has a copy of it. They didn't say they did. I love it, though. The activist group, which identifies as a news organization. What a stupid thing to say, The Guardian. What an absolutely idiotic way of phrasing that. The news organization, which the activist, which identifies. Now do CNN. Call that one a news organization. Doesn't matter. They said they turned it over to law enforcement and never did anything illegal. Well, I'm sure they said they never did anything illegal. That I know. They didn't say they turned it over to law enforcement. They turned it over to law enforcement after attempting to give it back to the lawyers who allegedly were the ones to contact Project Veritas to say they have this information, come see this tip. According to the group and its founder, James O'Keefe was not involved in any theft of the property, and that all of the Project Veritas' information on how the confidential sources found the property came from the sources themselves. And then we get into Project Veritas. According to Biden's lawyers, the group, in efforts to verify the diary's authenticity, a Project Veritas operative attempted to deceive Biden during a phone call into confirming that the diary did actually belong to her. Attempted to deceive her? The diary belongs to her. We know that it belongs to her now. It's not stolen property if it's not actual Biden's diary. We know that it's hers. They tried to deceive her into confirming that what belonged to her actually belonged to her. They tried to deceive her into telling the truth, is how we're led to believe this is activist journalism, Guardian. It's ironic that you accuse Project Veritas of activist journalism that identifies as a news outlet, because that's what you are. That's what this is. According to Biden's lawyers, the group then contacted them in an effort to land an interview with her father prior to the election. Biden's lawyers, who then reached out to federal prosecutors, accused the group of its extortion effort to secure an interview. This really sounds like, it's standard MO. You press as many charges as you can against the defendant to get them to plead guilty to something. You press as many charges against them as you can to get them to plead guilty to something, so you can get a plea to a lesser infraction, and they can hang their hat on the victory. Exactly what they did with Brandon Strzok. Exactly what they did with Brandon Strzok. Get them to plead guilty to something. And the way to do that, throw everything in the kitchen sink at them. And by the way, the way that they've gotten them to plead guilty to this, we were paid for the stolen goods. And then we were told to go back and get more. We were profiting from a scheme to steal private property from another person. And Project Veritas was the one funding and financing the known, solicited by Project Veritas, theft of another person's property. And they paid us $40,000 for it. Now we're going to see. We're going to see, but this looks stinkier than a bag of rotting fish. My favorite route of gaslighting. Are you sure I don't believe you? Are you sure I don't believe you? Are you sure maybe you're dreaming this? No, they called Biden and tried to deceive her into confirming that her diary was her diary. I mean, it's like it's sucking and blowing. It's her diary. It's stolen property because it was hers. They pleaded guilty to it. It's confirmed that it was her diary. Otherwise, it couldn't have been Biden's stolen diary. But Project Veritas, the activist news agency, the activists that identify as a news outlet, called her to try to deceive her into confirming that what was actually her diary was actually her diary. Yeah, we'll see what happens. It's shocking. I mean, it's shocking and it's outrageous. But we'll see. Maybe Project Veritas did ask her. Maybe there's text messages. Can you go back and steal some more stuff for us? And here's $40,000. Maybe they have that. Very interesting. Wild, wild world. Okay, let me just close up some of my back bookmarks here. So that's it. It's confirmed that it's Ashley's. And end of story. Now everybody can go read it. You can go share it around. I mean, it's still two things. Like I've read the passage that people are purporting is, indication of bad stuff. That doesn't look good. When an adult claims to have trauma as an adult from what was done to her as a child, that's sort of a more plausible attestation to being an actual victim, as opposed to out of the blue coming out 35 years later and saying, yeah, Kavanaugh did bad things to me at a house party 35 years ago. I've been messed up ever since, but I don't really have much evidence to support that. Diaries from the individual, stolen, contain admissions that are a lot more compelling. And also, by the way, it's interesting, FBI entrapment. If it's all a scheme, by the way, let's see what these individuals pleaded guilty to and how much time they serve. But it's also not just more of a compelling admission. It is oftentimes, in reality, an actual cry for help. So that diary was published in Conservative Review or something. It was published somewhere before. You can go read it and draw whatever inferences you want from it. But whatever inferences you draw from it, it's now confirmed to be Ashley Biden's authentic diary. Otherwise, these charges could not be the charges that they are. They could not have pleaded guilty to a crime that they didn't commit. Well, it was Russian disinformation. That's Seth Seth Rich. For anybody who doesn't know, everyone should look him up as well. That's not actually Seth Rich because he no longer is among the living.